All right, question number one for tonight. So, dear Rabbi, my brother is raising his only child, now 5 years old, without any religion. He told me that he thinks religion is responsible for people to disagree and was the cause for many wars and deaths. And I asked him if he was raising his son godlessly, without God, right? He answers he and his wife are people with spirituality, but not practicing or affiliated to any religion. A few times in the past, I remember reading your words about this, and I would ask you to please share them again. Please expand on spirituality versus religion, and also name some terrible wars that happened for no religious matters. I know he will listen, and maybe hopefully think twice and change. Maybe this time of the year when the lights of Hanukkah are shining bright all over, he will see more clearly. All right, so there's two separate questions here. First of all, is religion really the cause for many wars, for bloodshed in history? And if so, then how can we be religious? Or how can we embrace religion when it really created, based on this theory, of course, much friction and much bloodshed in history? It's number one. Number two, what does it mean when people tell us you're religious? You're spiritual, but not religious. I'm spiritual, but not religious. What's the difference between the two? Can they be truly divided? So let me relate to question number one first regarding religion, the relation between religions and wars. First of all, most wars in history were not religious wars. Yes, there were the Crusades and there were other wars, but you want an example for a war that was not started because of religion? Adolf Hitler, we just had one 75, 80 years ago. World War II had nothing to do with religion. Hitler himself was a proud atheist. And so that's one of the many examples. First World War also. And, what led to Second World War, but First World War also was responsible for millions and millions of murders. So that's an example. But the question is really if religion leads to war, because there are wars that were started by religion as mentioned. I would say that not only does religion not lead to war, but religion prevents war. And what I mean by that is that I think that if there wasn't religion, people would be fighting over parking spots like they do. They'd be fighting over a place in a restaurant to eat. They'd be fighting over the way they drive. They'd be fighting
politics. They're fighting over
human beings.
Fighting over
Politics, whatever it may be. So human beings start wars, not religion. Religion does not start wars. Yes, there were wars in the name of religion, but I don't think that's religion. I think it's just camouflaged as religious wars. But really, the people who fought were evil spirits of human beings, evil inclinations of human beings. And why are there wars altogether? So there's a historian that speaks about, Robert Nozick, who speaks about how most wars in history began because of boredom. Nations were bored. They wanted some fantasy, so they started a war. But certainly religion is not the essential cause if we're honest about it. I will say this, though, that furthermore, religion, I believe, prevents wars. A religion, at least the Jewish religion, is all about peace. I mean, we pray about peace each and every day, many times a day. We finished Amidah by asking God the ultimate prayer of all of our requests. How do we conclude that prayer? Oseh shalom bimromav, uyaseh shalom aleinu, right? We ask God for peace because religion asks us to be pursuers of peace. In the words of Hillel, the elder in Ethics of Our Fathers, he asks us to love creatures, everybody, but also pursue peace. So how does it go? Godef shalom. That you should be a pursuer of peace. Those are his words. Godef shalom. So that's in general what religions are about. But more specifically, to go even deeper into this, and I've mentioned this in the past, I think that when you believe in God, no matter what God you believe in, but you believe in God and therefore you quote unquote religious, then you're a nicer person. Why? Because you have this sense of accountability that no, this world is not a jungle. No, you can't just do whatever you want. No, you can't just start up with your neighbor or with the nation nearby. You're accountable. God wants you to behave in a specific way, in a peaceful way, in a loving way. And that's why, I mean, this is a scientific fact, by the way. And there's a great book out there called Big Gods that speaks a lot about this by this author with an Iranian last name. So I forget the name. But the scientific studies point to the fact that when, and I've mentioned this many times in the past, but when, for example, the students are in a bright room, they cheat less than if they were in a dark room. Why? Because in the dark room, no one's watching them. So the inclination to cheat then is greater. But when they're in a bright room, they know that someone is watching. And that's what religion is all about. You know that God is watching. So you're not gonna, you're in a bright room all the time. So you're not gonna do whatever you want to do. You're accountable. There's another study out of that I've quoted in the past, also out of, I think, the University of, I don't remember, I think Columbia University maybe, where they have a free coffee station, and they have a basket there for people to leave donations if they want to support this coffee station endeavor. And at one point, they put this big eyes behind the basket. I think I've mentioned this in the past. And they wanted to see if people leave more money when those big eyes are there, because we'll give them the impression that someone is watching. And indeed, they left more money when the big eyes were there, when compared to when the big eyes were not there again. So I would actually argue that religion not only starts wars, but actually prevents wars, because it makes people not just pursuers of peace, as any good religion out there would ask, but also makes people accountable. And when you feel like you have a camera 24/7 watching you, you watch your deeds and you become a little bit nicer. So that's relating to question number one. Question number two in this email, and that is that your brother says that him and his wife are people with spirituality, but they're not practicing or affiliated to any religion. I would challenge your brother, I would challenge people in general, say that I'm spiritual but not religious, to see if that's the case in their own relationships. Does your brother tells his wife, I'm spiritual, I love you, it's all in my heart, but you're asking me to clean the dishes, I'm not going to clean them, but I'm not religious? Could that notion of being religious, of being spiritual and not religious, exist in any other relationship? If my child tells me, hey, Dad, I love you, Abba, I'm crazy about you, but I won't do anything for you. I'm spiritual. No, I feel it. It's in me. I promise you. But doing something? Nah. I would say, well, that's ridiculous. What type of relationship is that? I believe you that you're spiritual. I believe you that you love me, my dear son. But if you really love me, it's got to translate into action. Now, what's religion? Religion in my eyes is, and maybe that's where the mistake is, that people don't know what religion is, and therefore they say, oh, I'm not religious. Or maybe it sounds like a dirty word. What's religion? Religion means that you are spiritual, not just in your heart and in your soul, but you are spiritual also in action, that you take upon yourself deeds that translate all this love that you have for God and for spirituality. Because just being spiritual really doesn't mean much. The question is, what do you do about it? If you do something about it, in my eyes, that's what religion is. Now, yes, I know people interpret religion to mean other things, but I don't think that those definitions at least apply to the Jewish religion. Because again, the Jewish religion means that you have 613 commandments that you aim to fulfill. And if you can't fulfill all 613, at least fulfill one or two or three or four at your own level, fulfill as many as you could. Because that's what religion really means. Translating the spirituality of your heart into the actions of your hands, of your legs, of your body. And just like we can love our spouses just by being spiritually engaged, we actually have to be practically engaged, religiously engaged. So too, it is with God. I can't just love him in my heart, but I also have to love him in my deeds. And that's what religious is. That's how every relationship works. And I think that's how the relationship that we have with God should work too. So that's the general idea of people being spiritual. And by the way, I just want to mention my dear mentor, Rabbi Steinsaltz, who would really despise that word spirituality, because he would take it in a different direction. He would challenge people. He says, what does it mean to be spiritual? What do you mean when you say I'm spiritual? Because I'll tell you this, Rabbi Steinsaltz would say this. Tell you this, you say that love is spiritual, great. Do you know that hatred is also spiritual? Anything intangible is also spiritual. So what does it mean? And therefore he would despise this word, because as they call it in the English jargon, it's psychobabble. I think it's a term that was coined by some Jewish psychologist by the last name of Rosen. I forget Edward Rosen, I think his name is. But it's babbling psychology without really knowing what it means. And yes, same thing, spirituality. What does it mean? What do you mean that you're spiritual? You're just babbling that word. It doesn't mean anything, because hatred is just as spiritual as love. Anger is just as spiritual as calmness. They're all intangible emotions, and therefore are in essence spiritual. So I would also be careful about using the word spiritual altogether. But that's as a side note, quoting my beloved mentor, Rabbi Steinsaltz. That's relating to this specific question for tonight. Next question. Dear Rabbi Allouche, why do some Jewish people not celebrate Thanksgiving? So we know that Thanksgiving is coming up next week on Thursday. And I personally think it's one of the most beautiful American holidays, if not the singular most beautiful American holiday, because it's a holiday in which that is family oriented, that is gratitude oriented. And both these things are great values in Judaism altogether. Why do some people not celebrate Thanksgiving? I could only think of 2 or maybe 3 answers. Answer number 1 is because you have, as you know, the ultra Orthodox say that we are not engaging in the world whatsoever. It's got nothing to do with America. It's got nothing to do with Thanksgiving. But anything that comes from the outside world, it's a no-no. Because our approach is to be completely enclosed in our ghettos, in our way of life, and in a way return to the shtetls that once were, and disengage completely with the outside world. So Thanksgiving comes from the outside world, we're not going to accept it. That's one answer. Second answer, which is maybe more sympathetic, is because I can tell you this. My wife, for example, does Thanksgiving each and every Friday night. For some Jews, Thanksgiving is really no big deal, because they have it every week. Every Friday night, we sit down with our family and with our guests, and we have a whole meal. Yes, it's not turkey, so it's chicken or it's meat, but it's a Thanksgiving dinner nonetheless. To compare it and to really frame it differently. So when Thanksgiving comes around, all right, another family dinner that involves family bonding, that involves putting our phones away and really connecting, that involves good food. That's another one, all right. So it's no big deal. They don't make such a big deal of Thanksgiving because, again, it happens each and every week. That's yet another answer why maybe some Jewish people do not celebrate Thanksgiving. But I will say once again that I think it's a beautiful holiday, focuses on gratitude, focuses on family bonding, focuses on all the good things that make the fabric of our society so strong and so stable and so lasting. And I encourage people to do it. And not only that, I think maybe I mentioned this, but that the custom of eating turkey on Thanksgiving is actually a Jewish custom. Why? Because turkey in Hebrew is hodu. That's the word for turkey in Hebrew. Hodu in Hebrew does not just mean turkey, but it also means to thank. Hodu Lashem Kitov, we say in our prayer. Our thanks is to God, Kitov, because he is good. So they use turkey because maybe we eat turkey because maybe in Hebrew, turkey also means thanks, giving thanks. So I think eating turkey is also a Jewish custom. So it adds another layer of special meaning to this holiday. So That's the answer to that.
Rabbi,
Yes.
Rabbi, I also heard that there's a list of which birds you can eat in the Torah, and that turkey is not mentioned. Have you heard that one? That's what I
There's a
heard.
list.
Is that
There's a list. So let me be more specific. The list of birds that are mentioned in Torah are the birds that are not kosher. Turkey is not mentioned. You're right, because turkey is a kosher bird. So that's another. It's kosher, so it's even better. I mean, of course, some people make the mistake that they think that they can buy therefore any turkey out there in Fry's or Safeway or Whole Foods or Trader Joe's, or I want monopolize one over the other. But of course, kosher meat means that it needs to be also slaughtered in the right way, that it needs to have gone through the process of kosherizing, which also includes salting the meat, for example, to make sure that no drop of blood is left in it, because we're not allowed to eat blood. It's a biblical commandment. So it needs to go through that whole process to be able to be kosher. Can't just relate to the bird itself or to the animal itself. But you're right, that turkey is a kosher bird. All right, next question for the
Right, let me ask it's interesting to note that on Shabbos, you can't have a Zoom call. Shabbos dinner and Zoom don't work. It's mitzvah. And so as a consequence, Thanksgiving is not on Shabbos. So for the first time, we'll be able to have Thanksgiving, and we're going to have Zoom, and we're going to have about 30 people from the family participating from all over the country.
Wow, that's so beautiful.
So this is another.
And that's a great point. I think I would encourage everyone also to Zoom in family for Thanksgiving, because it's not Shabbat, like you just said, and you can do that. So it's a beautiful point. By the way, Hanukkah is coming up. And then we also we're supposed to, when we light the menorah, we're supposed to wait and enjoy the light of the menorah and enjoy the family moments. So Zoom in people then also, because most of Hanukkah is also not during Shabbat. So, okay, good point. Thank you. All right, next question. As you know, my husband is a wonderful guy, and I feel extremely blessed. However, I have one issue that does not seem to be going away. Over the years, my husband and I have become more engaged in our Judaism, and recently, he has begun to wear a kippah all the time. As you know, he also added this mitzvah to the mitzvah bank in honor of Rabbi Steinsaltz. I'll explain what that is for those of you who don't know that yet. But the question is coming up. But this kippah wearing is such a rarity in our social circles that it makes me feel uncomfortable and at times even ashamed. As much as I would not let this bother me. As much as I wish I could simply not let this bother me, it does. Can you help me change my attitude? So that's the question. All right, so you become more and more observant, and which is a beautiful thing. And now your husband has started to wear his kippah all the time, and it's bothering you. It makes you feel uncomfortable and sometimes even ashamed. You added this mitzvah, your husband added this mitzvah to the mitzvah bank. Let me just elaborate on that for a second, to use this special moment to continue to encourage people to indeed give your mitzvahs to the mitzvah bank. We've reached about 1,000 mitzvahs, but our goal is to reach 2,000 mitzvahs by the first yard site of Rabbi Steinsaltz. This mitzvah bank is basically collecting any mitzvah, and the emphasis is on any. Doesn't have to be specific mitzvahs. Any mitzvah, preferably, yes, consistent mitzvahs that you do each and every day of your life or each and every week of your life. But even if you don't have consistent mitzvahs, that's fine. But send us one mitzvah that you've taken upon yourself in honor of Rabbi Steinsaltz and the tremendous inspiration he's been to all of us and to the world altogether. And no doubt this mitzvah will continue to bless you and create a ripple effect of goodness in this world. Now, that mitzvah, again, could be from wearing tefillin to fixing mitzvahs, to just being a good neighbor, to repairing a broken relationship, to wearing a kippah, to Shabbat candles, to you name it. It doesn't have to be, again, one specific mitzvah, any mitzvah. But going back now to this question. So, again, the question was about this beautiful couple, really, a wonderful couple. I know them well. One of them started wearing, the husband started wearing a kippah now all the time, and it bothers. It makes the wife feel uncomfortable and, to quote her, even ashamed. So can you, as much as I wish I could simply not let this bother me, it does. She's asking if I can change her attitude. So I'm going to go a little deeper here. I'm going to ask the question. First, I want to meet with you and really analyze this. Why is this making you feel uncomfortable? But I want to suggest something, and maybe I'm completely wrong. But I've heard this from others, and dealing with similar situations, this idea came to mind. So I want to ask this wonderful wife here. Is it really your husband making you feel uncomfortable by him wearing a kippah? Or is it the reaction of others to your husband wearing a kippah that has somehow been absorbed by you, maybe just a little bit, and therefore making you feel uncomfortable? Because we do this all the time, maybe even subconsciously. Very often, we do this with ourselves, that we dress a certain way, we speak a certain way, and as long as it's proper, of course, I'm not speaking about improper dressing or improper speech, but we do things in a proper way, and maybe we find ourselves in milieus where that proper way of speaking, that proper way of dressing is not in, and all of a sudden people start looking at us in the wrong way, and it starts influencing us, and we start doubting ourselves, and we start asking, well, maybe I shouldn't be dressing this way. Maybe I shouldn't be speaking this way. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this that way. And we start doubting ourselves. And eventually, maybe we even start canceling good behaviors, good deeds, just because we're afraid of what people are saying. And this guy looked at me the wrong way, and I heard him make a stupid comment about me. So it's making me all of a sudden uncomfortable because of our insecurities. We start changing the proper behavior that we should have and that we did display and exhibit. So I'm asking the question, the simple question, is it the reaction of others to your husband that's making you feel uncomfortable? Or is it really your husband wearing a kippah? If it's your husband wearing a kippah, then shalom bayit comes before everything. Then peace in your marriage comes before anything. And if there needs to be a small compromise there, I'm happy to speak to you to figure this out, even though I believe wearing a kippah is a statement of pride, and it's wearing the ambassador, the flagship of Judaism on our heads. And it's also a cause for many good things, believe it or not. I can tell you stories upon stories. It happened to me in the supermarket, or even just at gas stations, just because I'm wearing kippahs. Great things that came from it. But again, if it's just because your husband is wearing a kippah and it's a shalom bayit thing, it's a piece in the wedding, in the marriage thing, then let's speak about it. If it's not, if it's the reaction of others, then maybe you should be actually proud of your husband and embrace that fact. Because here is a man who believes in something. Here's a man who's willing to wear a kippah and say, this is who I am. This is my identity as a Jew. I'm proud of it. And I am carrying this flag with pride. So embrace that. Find this renewed respect in your husband, and don't worry too much about what other people are saying. Rabbi Sachs, who just passed away 2 weeks ago, would famously use this line time and time again. And he would say this about Jews. He would say that Jews that respect themselves as Jews are eventually respected by others. They might not be loved, but they'll be respected. Jews who disrespect themselves as Jews will eventually be disrespected by others. And it's true also on an individual basis. If I disrespect myself, it will invite the disrespect of others towards me. If I respect myself, if I'm confident in myself, I'm secure in who I am, then it will invite the respect of others towards me. Almost energetically, if you want to call it that way, spiritually speaking, but also in a very, very clear way. And it's true now for wearing kippahs or any type of other Jewish symbols that are carried with pride. I will say this, it's no coincidence that one of the first things Hitler did when he came into power was issue the Nuremberg laws in 1935, 2 years after the Nazi party rose to power. And one of the Nuremberg laws was that Jews cannot display any German symbols, any flags, any other German symbol. Why would he do that? What does he care? Actually, it should enhance Germany. If I'm wearing a German symbol as a Jew, then I'm adding a lot of pride to Germany. Why would he care? But the answer is in what we just said. He thought that, one second, the German symbols belong to Germans only. This despicable way of thinking, but German symbols belong to Germans only. And to restore the pride in Germany, we have to allow Germans to be fully Germans. Anyone that's not German, goodbye. I'm saying, let's learn in a very crooked way, of course, from Hitler himself. It's about time, just like he wanted to restore pride of Germans to Germans themselves and abolish the Jewish people altogether, then the best revenge we could do is actually be, and by the way, by doing so, of course, abolish the pride of Jews in their Judaism, abolish the pride of any other nations. The best things we can do, maybe as a revenge to Hitler, is also carry those flags that we have with pride and say to Hitler, no, we're not going to bow down to you. Am Yisrael Chai. We have our kippas, we have our tzitzis, we have all of those other displays of Judaism. We have our flags of Israel. We have our stars of David. We have our, some people wear chais, you know, the chai necklaces. We have those things. That's who we are. And we're not going to bend down to anybody. We're not going to bow down. We're not going to compromise our identity for anyone that might be looking at us in the wrong way. So that's a long way to.
So Rabbi Allouche, I always wear my stuff, and many times people will say, "Oh, you're Jewish." In fact, I just went to see a skin doctor, and as I was leaving,
right,
he said to me, "Shabbat Shalom." It was Friday afternoon, and I was in tears. Here's a young man saying Shabbat Shalom, and if anybody wants to see him, it's
right.
Dr. Luber.
There you go. No, it's a beautiful thing. And so to answer the relationship question, I'm saying I'd love to speak with you to see again, this is really just your husband wearing it, or if it's the reaction of others. And let's be honest about it, and let's continue this conversation. But I want to emphasize what you just said, Hannah, and to take this a step further and say that if you are thinking of displaying any type of Jewish symbol, whether it's your Magen David, or whether it's your kippah, or whether it's tzitzit, or whether it's a chai, or whether it's a necklace, or whether it's your last name, not changing it because it sounds too Jewish, or maybe carrying your Hebrew name instead of your English, whatever it may be, then do it with pride, because as Hannah just said, and as I've seen so many times, it creates a ripple effect that the naked eye cannot see. I can't tell you how many times people have been ignited just by this kippah that I'm wearing. Souls have been ignited just because of this kippah I'm wearing. Oh, like you just said, oh, you Jewish? Well, let me tell you something about my grandfather. And then all of a sudden, this person is reconnecting to his grandfather, who was some shtetl Jew in Europe, because of a kippah. And he's speaking about him with a sparkle in his eyes, with a radiant smile, with color in his skin that may have not been there for years. But just because of the kippah, now something has been ignited. And who knows the effect that this could have on so many families, on so many people all across the world. I'm going to conclude with the story because that's the end of the questions for today. And then I want to open this up to any more questions you may have. But staying on topic, I want to conclude with the story of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who asked two young bachrim, two young men, to take shmura matzahs to some distant place in Poland in the 1950s. He said, go, it's Pesach is coming up, go to this and this place in Poland, find Jews, and give them this matzah and tell them that Pesach is coming. These two bachrim, these two young men, went to this distant place in Poland, and what did they do? They opened the yellow pages. There wasn't Google then or anything like that. Yeah, yellow page, let's find some Jews. No Jewish name, nothing. It's a tiny place. They start asking around, no one. They stay there for 3 days looking, nothing. So they go back to America and they're all disgruntled. They thought they failed. Pesach comes about and they don't want to bother the Lubavitcher Rebbe, so they wait for after Pesach. After a few weeks after Pesach, they ask for a private audience, and the Rebbe welcomes them. And they say to the Rebbe, look, we feel very despondent that we failed in our mission. you sent us with matzahs to this tiny little place, and we couldn't find any Jews. And the Rebbe took out a letter out of his drawer, and he said, let me read this letter to you. And I'm not quoting word for word, but the letter said as follows: Dear Rebbe, I'm a Holocaust survivor. My entire family perished in the Holocaust. I have nothing left in this world. I'm back in my old town in Poland. And just 3 days ago, I asked God for a sign, whether I should remain Jewish. Maybe I should just be like all of my Catholic neighbors. It's enough. God has abandoned me. I asked God for a sign, whether I should remain Jewish or not. I went walking for 3 days, thinking that I was going to baptize. On the third day, I walk into my porch, and I see two Lubavitcher bachrim, Lubavitcher young men walking in the streets of my old town, like a scene out of a horror movie. People that are dressed, with beards and black hats, walking in this time. Poland must be and I said to God, wow, you couldn't have sent a better sign. Those young boys looked like my family. And I knew then that I had to remain Jewish. And the Rebbe said, you think that you were a failure? This woman was writing to me from the town that you visited. You, by just walking in that street, in that distant town in Poland, by walking in that street, displaying the Jewishness in pride, you saved the Jewish soul, literally saved the Jewish soul. So don't ever underestimate what a kippah can do, what displaying your Jewish symbols with pride can do, because it can create wonders more than the mind can fathom, more than the naked eye can see.